Grew up in Riverdale section of the Bronx, so I attended St. Gabriel's School.
Well, I was born in Union Hospital, 2 minutes from here. Lived on 195th Street when I was probably up to 3 years old. We moved to North Pelham, 2nd Avenue, right up the street from Hutchinson School, which was my first school. Moved Washington's birthday weekend of 1956, a tough time to move. And we moved to Bronxville. My parents bought their first house there in '56 on Sturgis Road, so we went to St. Joe's, which was a great school. About 6 or 7 of us from that class of '62 came down here.
Immediately before coming to the prep, I lived in Larchmont.
I grew up initially in Stuyvesant Town, but we had 3 brothers who were mischievous, and so we in Metropolitan Life didn't see eye to eye at some point. We moved to what's now called the East Village. I was lucky enough to get selected to go to Monsignor Kelly. Monsignor Kelly was what got me started on my New York City life of train travel that continues till this afternoon, actually.
We came to America on KLM Airlines. And for my brother and I, being in the plane, big trip. We had gone from Trieste down with the train all the way to Rome. So this was big travels for somebody that has barely traveled out of Pola. The plane at that time, I remember, had to stop off at Reykjavik to refuel in Iceland. We thought we were in the middle of the North Pole there.
It's a Sacred Heart Catholic grade school in Bayside, Queens.
I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, the son of Irish immigrant parents. I went to St. Paul's Grammar School and St. Peter's Prep. I graduated in 1962 from St. Peter's.
To some degree, I was recruited because I was a good basketball player, and Donnie Walsh and a couple of other guys who were from the neighborhood. There was 1, 2, 3 in his class who started on the basketball team, and one from the next parish too, St. Margaret. So there were 4 guys out of basically the North Bronx who went to Fordham Prep, saying, oh, okay, that's good. It was just a good school. A bunch of guys were going there in the neighborhood who I knew, and they all liked it, and they influenced me.
There was no other option. My father happened to be dean of Fordham Law School from '56 to '71, graduated from the college in '39. I grew up walking through this campus or being wheeled through this campus. I bleed maroon, always have. Fordham Prep was it. There was just no other serious option.
It was the very best school to attend.
You know, this part of your life, the high school years, are the most important, most formative years where you really form the base of being an adult. Being an adult that will be conscious of the community, that will give to the community, that will build themselves, their worth, their family. So for us, we felt very positive. We wanted to be part of that growth.
I think that for people like my parents, being Italian immigrants, the idea of a Catholic education and then a Jesuit, them probably didn't even know what a Jesuit education was, but figuring it out became important to them. The type of people that had gone before me from my grade school were in my group of friends, and good kids, guys who were gifted, both athletes and students. So it seemed like the right profile to them.
Well, the main reason why I came was the influence of a Dominican nun, Sister Denise, at St. Augustine School in Larchmont, who was very high on the school, and she had a lot of influence over me, and of course my parents were supportive of that.
Well, probably the priest who was a Jesuit resident at that point was Father Fitzpatrick. He was the freshman basketball coach. He would play with us. He was just so uplifting that I still remember him to this day. Father Librarian, as we called him at the time, who was Father McAleer. He really made me straighten out, so to speak, because I was doing stuff in the back of the classroom with a whole bunch of friends, i.e. kidding around. He took me and put me right in front of his desk. And I probably got the best grades in the entire Fordham Prep year, being right in front of his desk, not being able to fool around.
Father Fahey, I think it was Francis Fahey. He was a gentle guy. He taught us Latin and I think maybe religion. And he was a calm, steadying guy who I'll never forget. Bob Hawthorne was probably my favorite all-time teacher. He was our homeroom math teacher. Of course, the great tennis and squash coach at the college. And one of the sweet ironies of life, go up 30, 40 years later, I ended up representing Bob. He came to me for his estate planning stuff. Now, I don't do estate planning, but my firm does. So he ended up as a client, and what an honor that was.
Chuck DeParma, Latin teacher at the time. I was very involved in student government while at the prep, and he was the teacher in charge of making sure that that ran properly, and I got to know him and respect him immensely. And Gene O'Brien, who was principal at that time, had an enormous influence on me.
Father Sloan, French teacher who had the courage to take 12 to 13-year-olds on a camping trip around France for 6 weeks. The insanity or the perseverance to do that while smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day in a camper.
Richard Lanahan, he was a reader and encouraged writing, and I really kind of took to both creative writing and critical writing. He was just a terrific all-around quasi-mentor, quasi-scholar. He'd probably say he was a real scholar, and just created a fascination with literature and writing that really attracted me. Father Okonski, Stan Okonski, was my mentor. He was my homeroom guy, but he had a big influence on everything that I did. I did a lot of, I did the yearbook because of him. I was in 2 of his classes, and again, another guy who the written word was sacrosanct, and they kind of imbued that in me, and I really took to it and enjoyed it. My education is so formative in person that I am today, and Fordham Prep is integral to that.
The Latin and Greek stands out to me, and being a lawyer, I had no idea I was going to be a lawyer when I was here. I had no idea what I was going to be. So, you know, it's tough to assign any particular subject to what you do later in life, but the study of Latin and Greek, that discipline, and I love words, so that gives you that background of Latin and Greek connections to this day.
Well, I remember most vividly the requirement to read 20 books in the summer before I came here, and also how tough it was to get that all done, but I did that. And I remember vividly, too, the requirement of at least 3 hours of homework, and I dwelt on that at least, and tried my best to live up to that standard. And that stick-to-itiveness and hard work, frankly, has stuck with me throughout my life. The value of hard work and the patience that it takes to master something.
I always attribute all of my success to a very non-vocational education and having the privilege of having that basis, and coming to the prep and studying Latin and classical Greek and reading Thucydides, the Peloponnesian War. I mean, just I have these translating Homer, and just these kind of all these aspects of classical liberal arts education. And the basis it creates, and that continued at Boston College, but certainly being a thinker in the true Jesuit sense of questioning what you don't understand and questioning perhaps what is written and established until it makes sense for you, not being afraid to ask why, when, and how, and then having the basis in literature, language, history. The sciences were a little bit less important to me, but having that as a broad-based language, learning how to think, learning how to write, learning how to communicate, learning how to speak, all the things that probably have more impact in your life and success you may have than anything else.
Basically, I played basketball. And Mr. Sullivan, of course, was a major influence. You look back at that now, and he was really a good coach. He was very straightforward, and I thought he was a terrific person.
I was on the swim team and a proud member of the medley relay, hampered by a small hands problem. So I never excelled, but I remember vividly John Little, the swim coach, most famous to my memory about his telling us always to line up alphabetically by size.
I played football and baseball. I played football for 2 years. The baseball coaches were terrific. Sammy Osaski, who was a legend around here, was my varsity baseball coach. And, you know, the whole idea of team, even though I had played a lot of baseball before I got here, he was a team guy first, and he really imbued that spirit.
The first couple weeks, maybe even a week of track, we were running 3-4 miles, I forget. Joe Fox, of course, was the coach. And I was probably in the top 5 speed-wise. But then we had a Saturday practice, took the train down with Neil Cronin, my friend from St. Joe's. It's about 10 a.m. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. I said, Neil, would you rather go run 5 miles or go to the Bronx Zoo? We went to the Bronx Zoo. Monday, Joe Fox grabbed me by the lapels in the hallway and put me up against the wall, not in a harsh, violent manner, and said, where were you? And he said, you're done. So that was the end of my track career. Senior year, I played football. And Sammy Osaski, whom I loved, was, of course, our coach. And I ended up playing in every game except the first one against Riverdale. And the guys that I played football with here, including Schmergy and Joe Bandana, the most incredible, unique human being I've ever known in my life. But that experience playing football here was everything to me.
Well, if you think about it, we had to go to church sometimes on Fridays, I believe, and some other people went into the sodality, which I did. And I think it gave you a set of values, which translated even more so when you went to a place like the Naval Academy, which had an honor system. So you were used to, if you use the expression, doing the right thing.
There was a spirituality underneath all of it that never left you, that was impressed upon you by the Jesuits and others. And, you know, do what you can to make yourself a better person, but more importantly, what can you do for other people? And I can't believe that didn't stay with me, and it was impressed upon me here.
Ignatian values are at the center of my life. The concern for the, as Francis says, for those at the periphery is something that's very important in my worldview. And those on the periphery are really not that far away.
I think there was an emotional generosity and just a real desire to have the rising tide, you know, raise all the boats. There was a sense that we were all on a journey, and that we were going to bring everyone with us, and there were people helping people.
But the notion of men for others, and the notion of the whole person, and the notion that you're put on this earth to help others, and more particularly help the less than, there's a spirit here that you can't help but absorb. And clearly, Fordham Prep laid that men for others spirit in me.
Fondest memory was probably playing football and ringing the victory bell. We beat St. Dominic's, and I had a pretty good game that day.
Having lunch, especially fourth year, because we were on the ground floor of Hughes Hall, and we're still eating in Keating Hall. So we would be poised at the end of fourth period. You had 4 in the beginning and 2 in the afternoon. Of when the bell rang, we would just bolt out the door to be first in line at Keating Hall, so you would not have to stand in line a long time to get your meal. You know, you would get, the great meal in the wintertime was you brought your own sandwiches, but you could get some mashed potatoes with gravy, which was terrific. So when I was a plebe, I was standing there in line with Roosevelt Greer, because the Giants were practicing at Fordham University at that time. And so all these guys made the mistake of coming to lunch when the prep descended on them like a cloud of locusts. There's a lot of memories we have in classroom where we, you know, played tricks on teachers, which I probably not going to get into. We terrorized almost a first-year German teacher in our 3rd year there. The poor guy, we would just do things in class that just really make him nervous. Great memories I had on the basketball team. The last game, we lost to Hollis, but we lost in a very close game at Iona University in the Iona tournament. I still remember that game as if it was yesterday.
It's just my class. I had an incredible class.
The friends I made, which are friends to this day, service on the senior council in senior year, student government generally, but great friends and great teachers.
One of my fondest memories we had, and I was just looking at pictures, which I obviously owe you, there was a tradition of a student-faculty football game that for some reason in my senior year, it just got built up into a frenzy. And the day of the game, it was I don't want to say there was a bitter rivalry, but there was a serious tone to it. And it was kind of a ferociously played touch football game with a lot of temperatures raised. But when it was over, it was the source of a lot of fun, a lot of jokes, a lot of laughter after that. So the lead up to and the game itself was really one of my fondest memories.
My fondest memory is just the cultural diversity that I was able to see. I came from a place where my friends were mostly Irish, German, Italian, Jews, middle class, working class. In the prep, for the first time I met kids from Westchester, from Mamaroneck, guys who wore moccasins and wide-well cords and had lacrosse sticks. I didn't even know who these people were. And then I met guys from the South Bronx, Puerto Rican guys, black guys who like literally come off the street. So like just the cultural diversity of people that I met, and then what they brought, their food, their music, their habits, and it was a real melting pot.
Well, my most lingering memory of Fordham Prep is of the alumni and students and faculty of the school. The school has, my most lingering memory, I think, is of the quality of the alumni. I mean, this school turned out people who were leaders in business. I'll give you one example. At one point, right before I got here, Carl Liggio was the chief counsel of Ernst & Young, one of the largest accounting firms in the country. Larry Ricciardi was the chief counsel of IBM. Anyone of a certain age knows what IBM is. The freshmen may not. And Jim Milliken was the chief counsel of International Paper, the largest paper company in the world, and IBM then was the most important computer company in the world. That's absolutely astounding. And I found it fun, the Yankees made the World Series my first year here in 1996, and I'm a baseball fanatic, and I would read a lot, and I found out a lot of people in the building didn't know about Johnny Murphy and Snuffy Sternweiss and Vin Scully. So I actually put out a one-page data sheet on Fordham Prep and the World Series, and that was a big hit. We had an assembly for all the freshmen. Then, of course, everybody wanted a holiday when they won the World Series. We had to put off. We may have done that. I'm not positive, but if we did do it, we said only this year. We can't do it every year that they win. But I never forgot that. But the, very dedicated faculty and administration. Bob Gomprecht and Dennis Ahern and Bruce Bott had basically spent their whole lives up to that point, being students and working here, making great contributions.
The basic training that you got, the ability to organize your time, the spiritual values, the right and the wrong, the teachers that you had who basically challenged you, all of those things were helpful in planning and, basically doing what you did later in your career.
The prep experience overall was so valuable no matter what you were going to do in life. The strength that I took from here, from all of these other people, has stayed with me.
Yeah, I would have to say the opportunity to play here and again to play over on Jack Coffey Field and to be lucky enough to play on the team at a young age and get exposed to the older guys, some of whom were really good and going on to play at college. It inspired me to keep playing baseball, and by keeping playing baseball, my love for the game and my attachment to the game is what drove me to get my foot in the door at baseball. Which, had I not played, I'm not sure that I wouldn't have given up, because I was really trying to pursue something that I loved. You get that advice a lot when you're a young man looking where you're going to go with your career, and it stuck with me. And it took me quite a long time for baseball to recognize my talents. I'm guessing that if I hadn't loved the game so much, maybe along the way I would have said, you know what, these guys don't get it, and I'm going to continue with, the legal career that I was in at the time. What I never forgot was the lesson that Fordham Prep taught you was, you should treat others like you'd like to be treated yourself. Getting to know everybody who was part of the bigger community, which again was what Fordham Prep encouraged, was something that I took into my personal life and into my professional life.
I'll get back to the work ethic, and that has I think been a key part of what I believe in and what modest achievements I've had in my professional life are, I think, directly attributable to them.
Sending Joe, my son, to Fordham Prep, for me, was like having an assistant, a friend. I was busy working, it took a lot of my time, and I was very concerned and very about the education and where my children are going. And so, for me, Fordham Prep was a great partner in raising a great individual.
I think that everything affects my business decisions of becoming an entrepreneur. I think the experience of the prep was one of people, and just seeing how different people confronted opportunity, how important for them it was to succeed or unimportant, and just having that varied experience, cultural experience of different people and how they saw the world.
First of all, we had an outstanding board here at the prep, and that helped me to develop a board at Cristo Rey. Boards were relatively new in Jesuit high schools at that time. I created the first board at St. Peter's Prep the last year I was there. So I didn't have really an experience of a board there. And I had a great experience here with Kevin Hackett, Bill Morrow, and then Jim Murray as the board chairs. That was a huge help because the board at Cristo Rey got very involved. Particularly, they helped us get a lot of jobs. Secondly, the Fordham Prep alumni have been great. I was very sensitive about not soliciting Fordham Prep alumni to turn their allegiance from the prep to Cristo Rey, but without soliciting, gifts came pouring in, contacts for jobs, so the Fordham Prep community has been enormously helpful. As a matter of fact, the first summer we had our program, we have a 3-week program for entering freshmen to get them ready for the workplace. The renovation of the building we're in wasn't ready, so it all took place here at Fordham Prep. So we've had a great relationship, and the Fordham Prep community has been of enormous help and encouraging support to Cristo Rey, New York.
Well, when you start something, put in 10 years in it, and then all of a sudden say, wow, maybe I can get into this thing too, it means an awful lot. And I appreciate the trustees and the committee recommending me, even though they suddenly, fired me from my job before I could get in because I wrote the rule that you couldn't be in when you're still a trustee or a member of the committee. But it's a great honor because my classmate Norb Sander, who passed away, this is the guy who founded and basically built the Armory, which is a premier track event place in New York City and the United States. And he passed away recently. He's in there. Another of my classmates was shot down in Vietnam, Gene Pabst. He's in there. So to be with those two people in the Hall of Honor means an awful lot to me. And it means an awful lot to, you look back, well, maybe you did a few right things in your life and you're, round the bend. I'm not kidding myself. I'm really an old guy now. I'm in the Golden Ram category. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm round the bend. And I hope it's a long stretch run. I hope this is the Belmont Stakes rather than Pimlico, the Preakness, when it's a really short one.
Well, it's the honor of my life. The prep has been a central part of my life. I've attended several of the dinners, which I tell everybody, hey, it's a great dinner, by the way. You don't have to come just because of me, it's a great dinner. To be in attendance when the great Dwight Darcy, who lost his life on 9/11, was inducted posthumously, was a particular thrill. My old teammate Joe Moglia, who's going on to fame and fortune heading TD Ameritrade, and leaving to go back to football and coach, and with whom I'm in contact with. And he was a year behind me at the prep. So his night was great. And then the one and only John Veronis from Larchmont, the greatest all-around athlete who ever attended the prep. The Greek god, we call him. But I was at his dinner, which was a deep thrill. So being in the Hall of Honor, being inducted the same night as Walter Higgins, for whom the gym is named. His son Pete is a great friend of mine. He was an Iona guy. But the names, it's the thrill of my life. I mean, when I got the letter, I was in disbelief. For a guy who couldn't graduate with his class, I'm the only one so far in the Hall of Honor, and I hope there's many others to follow. It's the thrill of my life.
I'm very humbled to be in the hall, and hope that I can continue to live out a life of service.
I'm not sure that I'm deserving. It's always humbling to get recognized by your peers. And at this stage of my life, you do a lot of reflecting. It's only going to make my connection to the prep stronger. I have an enormous debt of gratitude to the place.
It's a huge honor. I think, don't they put my name on a brass plaque somewhere? This is like my first brass plaque, so it's a big deal, Any other brass plaque I've had, I paid for myself. Breaking down those financial barriers when possible and allowing access to people who couldn't go there strictly because of money is a very, very positive thing, adding to the diversity and the spirit that is Fordham Prep.
Well, it's a great honor. I'm very humbled by it. I enjoyed my 8 years here very much. I think I worked pretty hard, and I was able to tell the Fordham Prep story, and it means a lot. And in particular, to go in with the group of people that I'm going in with, many of whom I know, Kevin Hackett, Tim Brosnan. I've gotten to know the Dolan family very well, so Brendan, who was a 9/11 victim, is going in. I knew Dwight well. So there are a lot of connections there, and personally, it's going to be a very moving evening for me. I'm very honored and deeply grateful.